Hello and welcome to Bridgecast. My name is Joshua. I'm the founder and president of Bridge Builders STL. We're super excited that you're here all with us. We're going to have a super wonderful conversation today. I'm here with Dr. Emily Thompson from Webster University. She's the head of the French program at Webster University. We will talk briefly, I'm sure, about French, but really one of the main reasons that Dr. Thompson and I are connected is through Impact Scholars, and it's a program that Dr. Thompson has been heading up and leading for the past 2 years, but has been in theory for a very long time. So I'm very excited to hear more about that, as well as the work that you and I have been doing together for quite some time. Before that, I'm going to talk about a couple of logistics. The first thing is that we still have that free voter transportation coming down the pipe. We are going to be providing that voter transportation on November 3rd in the greater St. Louis area. So that extends as far out to St. Peter's, to Festus, to everywhere probably in the city and the county of St. Louis. So if you know somebody or you yourself need the transportation to the polls on November 3rd, please look at our website. It's at the very top. We have a large amount of volunteer drivers who are ready and willing to drive folks wherever they need to in order to vote. And now we just need more folks to sign up. So if that's you or somebody that you know, please pass on our website. It's www.bridgebuildersstl.org, and that is the best way that you can sign up through that. The other thing is our raffle. Our raffle that we do through Bridgecast is one of our top fundraisers right now during COVID-19 to raise money for our exchange program. So right now we're still doing our Rock and Jump raffle that will extend into next week. For our next episode, that's when we'll pick the winner from that. Joe, our director of development, will get out a graphic for that raffle this week sometime, and so please check into that and buy those raffle tickets. Then all that money will go directly to support the exchange program and to send our exchange program members on that trip at a very low cost to them. I do want to say that we are seeing numbers in COVID-19 climb as of recently, so it might not be the best idea to go to Rock and Jump right now, but the plus side of this raffle is that it has no expiration date. So this is something you want to put in our offer for a Christmas gift and take it out once we get a better handle on the numbers as a whole. I do want to say Rock and Jump, I have seen on their website they're taking limited capacity, and we want to make sure that we're offering the most responsible choice we can through these raffles. So my recommendation right now is to make sure that even if you do get the raffle, it doesn't have an expiration date. Save it, hold on to it until you feel most comfortable and find a good time to use them. But there's 4 admissions to the trampoline park at that time. I believe that is all of the logistics. Please stay connected onto our website. We just made a couple more additions to it, adding some of the Bridgecast videos into our programs, talking about how different theories such as place-based learning, community building, our exchange program are all talked about by Dr. Kleiman, Dr. Parsons, Dr. Cummings, in very interesting ways. And so come back and see more of those videos and share them on Facebook. It's really crucial right now that we get more community engagement. Bridge Builders as a grassroots organization is doing our best to make sure we stay engaged in our St. Louis community and beyond. And it is our #1 priority to get those exchange programs done and have our exchange program members get quality experiences that can be community building tools way down the line. But enough of me talking about that. Let's go to the interview. Dr. Thompson, we're so excited that you're here with us. Would you mind giving us a quick intro on your work at Webster University and also your work with Impact Scholars?
Sure. Always a pleasure to talk to you, Joshua. So I am a professor of French and International Studies here at Webster University, and I've been here for 23 years. So I'm heavily invested in the Department of Global Languages, Cultures, and Societies. But 2 years ago, I welcomed the first cohort of Impact Scholars, which is Webster's version of an honors program. And I'm currently heading the committee that designed that program and that is helping putting it in place right now.
It is such cool work, and I, for one, am so excited to be working with you on that project and have Bridge Builders as part of the curriculum in that program. Would you mind talking to us a little bit about the program and itself and what are the goals of Impact Scholars?
Yeah, you've been in it from the start.
From the
as
start,
well,
yes.
yeah. So it's a group of students. The mission statement calls them remarkable students. So the idea is to empower remarkable students to become agents of transnational change. So that's the kind of mission language. And what it means is that we try to identify students coming into the university, their first year at the university, who have something about them that stands out and that makes them harder to just fit in that sort of typical student path of coursework. So sometimes that may be test scores, really exceptional test scores, really strong grades. It may be service work that they've done, an unusual amount of leadership that they've shown in that area. It might be creative projects that really stand out. So different kinds of qualities and skills that we're looking for. And once we identify those students, what we want to do is for 4 years give them all the opportunities and resources they need to get the most out of their university experience. So help them establish those connections, help them become the kind of person they want to be, and make a very strong positive impact on their communities, however they choose to define those.
And I think it's wonderful that Webster is doing this. Like you said, I was in a meeting with you about 3 years ago, talking about this program and what it would look like, and you wanted our opinion as students as what might be beneficial, and I really appreciate you talking to us about that. One of the things that we made sure to mention, and I know you and I have talked about, and as you just mentioned as well, that grades are not the only factor, right? Having students go into the program. Why do you think that was important, and why is that important to you now in trying to create this cohort of students for Impact Scholars?
So the goal of the program is to form people who will to help transform students to make these changes, to be future leaders. But we didn't want to so we're kind of creating an elite group, but we didn't want to start by looking for an elite group. We wanted to make it very open. We wanted to look for these qualities in students who may not have had the same opportunities and experiences, but who could come together and working collaboratively do something really amazing. And we wanted to make this program specific and unique to Webster. Webster is not a typical university, and so we thought there's no point in just creating an honors program that's going to look like every other honors program. For these students to really thrive, and for us to give Webster students what they're looking for, we need to do something a little bit different than that. Look beyond traditional, conventional ways of identifying remarkable students. And one way, so we had a bunch of faculty and staff and administrators on this committee trying to think of how to do this. And then someone said, well, of course we have to ask the students. And so that's when we looked for students who really were active, who were leaders, who were doing remarkable things already at Webster. And we went to you, among others, to say, well, what would you have wanted if this program had existed when you started? And I do believe, Joshua, that you were one of the ones who said, I would never have been accepted if I was only looking for people with high GPAs, right? So I didn't blow your cover there, but I think about that, and I mentioned that without naming you to the groups of Impact Scholars coming in, and I think they all recognize that is not a good way of identifying remarkable students or students who could do more than maybe a typical university education would normally ask of them. So, I
really appreciate you mentioning that. Other than my mother, who's probably watching, is over here shaking her head because she said, "Oh, she used to get on me for my GPA." But nonetheless, I've seen education really change for me as I've gone into the higher education fields opposed to high school, where I was obviously struggling more. But I think that the learning that you do, I would agree, is not traditional. It's something that is a little bit unorthodox. But nonetheless, I argue, remarkably effective in creating that change. And so I would like to ask you to explain a little bit how that non-traditional educational theories and educational approaches play into Bridge Builders and Impact Scholars' connection together.
So I think that if you read about education, there tends to, and even in the popular press, there tends to be an opposition between sort of an ivory tower form of education, often linked to the humanities, and then a kind of education that is more practice-based, so either oriented towards social justice work or career-based. So you've got to go out and students have to go out and do things. And I think that that's a false dichotomy. I think that that in order to learn who you are and who you want to be, you have to go out and do things and put yourself out there and practice some soft skills and learn to listen and learn to collaborate with other people and learn where you live and who lives around you and with you. But I think you also need you need to do some reflection. You need to do some exploration. There are a lot of, you need to learn from the experience of other people, maybe whom you can't meet and talk to in person, but whom you can study. And so I think there's a balance there, and that's what we're trying to achieve with the 4 years of Impact Scholars program. And because it's not traditional, we also need to involve student mentors, and again, that's where you and others have come in, where we can see what kind of paths you have forged, and show students that there are other ways to achieve things, and to show them that, to give them the confidence to try things out and to follow their passions, and to look for paths that may not be clear, but paths that we can help them clear and forge.
And I think that it's wonderful. I have noticed in the 2 years that I've been working with Impact Scholars is that these students have definitely had the opportunity to think in a new way. And, you know, where sometimes we're focused on homework or focused on what the next test is, we're definitely looking at this class, and this year in particular, I would argue, at what is the project going to be with the organization that they're working with. And for the viewers at home, Bridge Builders has sort of taken a stance of working with the students, and the students have actually done many different service projects for the organization. And so one of the things to be thankful for Dr. Thompson, the work of her colleagues, and also the students as a whole, is the wonderful work that's been offered from that perspective. But I believe that there is a two-way education, that where both I learn from the students and they learn from me as a student, and also we can learn from each other as a cohort about the work that we do together. Going forward, in the following years, you say that...
Can I interrupt you, actually?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And so the name of the program is Impact Scholars, and I think
Yes.
for students to have an impact doing community service work, it's a little naive to think they could just come as first-year students and immediately find a project and do a project and have an impact. And instead, what we're trying to do is concentrate all that goodwill and all that passion and have them learn from programs that are already in place, such as Bridge Builders, so they can see what goes into a thoughtful project, and as you and I talked about before, also learn what mistakes can sometimes be made as you're starting this, and to perhaps learn from those as well.
Absolutely.
But to have that kind of mentorship and to see work that's be part of an ongoing work, then maybe they'll all scatter and do very different things for the rest of their time at Webster, but hopefully they'll have learned from your experience, and what they will have done this first semester will be much more meaningful than if they just found projects on their own.
Absolutely. And Emily Martin, who is a member of Impact Scholars last year, stayed with Bridge Builders quite a bit and did a lot of work with us even past it, so I think that it's absolutely feasible to see students still working with Bridge Builders even following. And it has been more difficult with COVID, right? And I know you guys are meeting in a hybrid setting of different styles of learning, but also some of it masked up in a lecture hall. how has COVID impacted, wrong word to use for Impact Scholars, but how has it changed how you've been teaching Impact Scholars this year?
Once you're part of Impact Scholar Program, you use that verb impact all the time. Of course, it's been a huge challenge, and we talked about, that was one of the topics that we broached this semester with the group. So how has COVID changed university education, and how has it changed community service, and how has it changed this notion of teaching community service through a university class, which was what we were doing, and we looked at some U.S. examples, local examples, U.S. examples, international examples about the effects and the limitations, and what many of the students came up with is that yes, the needs are greater than ever. There are so many more people suffering. There's so many more people who need assistance. But the ways that we're used to providing service have been limited or completely halted. And I think that forces us to be much more creative and also to find time and energy where people may have those in short supply.
Yeah.
So it's frustrating because I think we haven't done as much as we should be doing, and we feel that pressure of yes, the need is greater than ever, but it's difficult to turn around and to adapt as quickly as we need to. So.
I really agree. As somebody who's trying to get involved more and more with community organizing, it's tough right now, even with bridge builders too, trying to make sure that we still stay involved with our community, but at the same time, we weren't able to have our run for EP3, we weren't able to have our exchange program last year, and it seems like we've definitely been lacking that interpersonal connection. So I absolutely understand where you're coming from.
I guess there's one positive, I would hate to go that far, but one way in which it's been a very fruitful exercise to think about how to serve, because we work with another student, Sarah Hill, who's the president of the Student Government Association here at Webster, and her organization is much more loosely organized than yours, and so she basically enables students to connect with different projects going on in the immediate community in Webster Groves. So it leaves students with more choice, and I think some of the students who chose to work with her came with a pretty conventional idea of, well, I've done this in the past for service learning and service projects. I'll try that again.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't possible because so many of the common projects aren't possible anymore. And so that forced them to think creatively. Yeah. If I can't just donate things, if I can't just go in person, how can I help those people? And Carla Armbruster, who is a professor in English and who's co-teaching this course with me, always heavily emphasizes the idea of design thinking, right? So just not to have this one-size-fits-all solution, but to communicate with those you're trying to help and to find out what they think they need and what you can learn from them. So I think in that sense, it's helped us and helped the students think along those lines out of necessity.
It's a complicated subject, right? And I sympathize with those students who definitely feel like it's difficult, and I absolutely see where you're coming from. A lot of times when we view community service, we see food drives or clothing drives, and then we drop the box off and then it's done. But I think one thing that I've definitely learned from you in our conversations as well is that civic engagement will go much further beyond that. I think that's something I admire very much about the Impact Scholars Program. Looking forward into the future for Impact Scholars, what would you like to see from Impact Scholars, and what are your goals for the program as a whole?
So this is the second group of students we've welcomed. We learn, those of us involved in the project and engaged in the project learn so much from them every time. So yeah, we're always redesigning and trying to improve and add. I think my main goal right now is to get to be more effective at getting the word out and getting more people, especially faculty at the university, involved with these students.
Yeah.
So that again, the goal, one of the goals is to help them make connections with people in the various areas that interest them. And I think that would be a lot easier if more faculty knew about the program and wanted to get involved, and then the students would benefit from, again, more diverse faculty being part of it.
And I'm very excited to be part of it, and I look forward to the future to see where it grows from. And I know in my experience, faculty diversity of thought has been incredibly beneficial to my education as a whole, not so much that they compete with each other, but having a holistic view more so for education, I think is very beneficial in looking at how civic engagement can be pushed forward, but also community building. And I know that you were mentioning earlier in our conversation before we started recording about how this year community seemed to develop a little bit more in a new way for the first year students. Is that a goal to try and keep all 4 of the years while they're at the university, those different classes together to try and build a community? Is that something you all are trying to shoot for?
So we talk a lot about and think a lot about communities, right?
Yeah.
So in the very smallest sense, it's the students who come in together, start the university at the same time, and who are sharing a lot of these learning experiences. Expand out a little bit more, and it's every year's cohort of impact scholars and what they can learn from each other. So this the last year's group is involved in an interdisciplinary research project right now, and they're going to present in the spring to the new group. So that will be one way. Hopefully they'll have more opportunities to do things together socially, but for them to learn from each other and to see what kind of work is being done by those who've preceded them. And then of course there's the work in the Webster community, and another goal we have is to reinforce those ties to international communities that Webster University is connected to, and to have the students working, learning, exchanging with students and faculty and staff at our international campuses.
Really phenomenal. Like I am very excited about the program as a whole. I'm so enthusiastic to be a part of it. I just think it's really phenomenal that you're doing it. So thank you for your work thus far. I wanted to ask one last question, and this is a question I always ask the guest on Bridgecast, is to just offer you time to speak on a subject that you would like to speak on. And of course, connection to community building or something around that. It can either be connected to impact scholars or entirely separate from it, but I just wanted to give you time to speak. Is there anything specifically you'd like to speak on to the community?
Well, I had thought maybe of asking you about bridge builders and how you're dealing with COVID, but perhaps your listeners have already heard about that. We kind of addressed that a little bit earlier. Yeah, there's so many important topics
There are
now,
right now, right? Yes.
But I don't know, if I think of something that is in common with the different work that I do at the university, it's the importance of improving communication with others, right? So whether that's teaching French, how to talk to someone who doesn't, who hasn't grown up speaking the same language as you, who's grown up in a different environment, with the impact scholars, teaching them the importance of empathy and practicing empathy. So I think with everything that we see going around us, happening around us today, those skills are more important than ever. And I too have been very excited working with this project and working with you and working with the students, because it takes me out of my little professional rut, perhaps, and forces me and challenges me to think differently about teaching, about communicating with people who have different roles in our community, and that's so valuable. You can never do that enough, and you're never good enough at it. So that's one of the benefits for me at this work.
That's the truth, and I think that now, I think you're right. Right now, more than ever, it's the time for communication, for empathy, and a new way for us to build that community and those interpersonal relationships now. So, again, thank you so much for being on and talking with us. One of the things I want you all as viewers to take home is that what Dr. Thompson is doing is very important for education as a whole. I know a lot of what we've been talking about recently is education, but what I believe is important about that is that Bridge Builders is more and more becoming an advocate for education that is less than traditional, and looking at things like place-based learning that Dr. Kleinman's talking about, looking at programs like Dr. Thompson is talking about with Impact Scholars, and other programs that we've proposed in the past. And this all connects back to the exchange program, because in similar ways that you've talked about, Dr. Thompson, with how Impact Scholars is challenging our view of service and our view of civic engagement, I think the exchange program is doing something similar on a much more condensed scale, of course, an intensive 2-week program, but very similar themes. There is much overlap in what we talk about in both programs. So again, thank you so much for being on. Thank you to our viewers. Next week, please join us. We're going to be having John Copeland join us. John is a good friend of mine and has recently been working on a new initiative for suicide awareness in multiple different regions. And so we're going to be shifting the conversation a little bit from education to be talking about more advocacy work within that particular field. John has some very interesting thoughts and research done about suicide awareness in rural communities, but also in regions amongst LGBTQ youth and other targeted and very marginalized communities. That's very important for us to talk about now. So again, we'll talk about that a little bit more next week, and we'll make sure to give lots of heads ups to our viewers to make sure that any language that we talk about is making sure to be as accessible and trigger friendly as possible. So we hope that you're able to join us. But until then, thank you for joining us, and we hope you have a wonderful week. Bye-bye.